Hey y'all, welcome back to Dots and Beyond. My name is Beth. Today we are going to set up my October 23 bullet journal with a Halloween playlist theme. This is Conclave of Lost Shadows, my playlist from 2018. Let's go ahead and get started. For this theme, I kind of wanted to get a Coven in the Wood vibe. This is our inspiration image, the cover art from my playlist. But I also wanted to keep it simple. I didn't want to use printables. I've been doing a lot of that lately. I decided I was going to try to do this with just Tombow markers. Because my annual theme is music and lyrics, I do need to sneak in some lyrics. And this time I'm just not going to sneak them in. This time I am putting them in prominent position right in the middle of the setup. To design our forest, we're going completely monochromatic with a series of the gray and black Tombow markers. I will link the colors in the description box below, along with all the other supplies that we are going to use for this. I do use a pop of red as well. This is what we're going to use to make our forest. You're going to have to trust the process. I wanted to have our coven around a fire. I have drawn a half circle around them so that I know where to stop my tree forest line to show that that is kind of a glowy spot in the forest. And then I also have this stencil that I affectionately refer to as the Buffy stencil because the letters on it look like the letters from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Everything in the foreground for this setup is going to be in solid black silhouette. So I'm going to start off by giving us a little bit of a ground area to work with. And that just means coloring in a little bit of the bottom of the journal. And then I'm going to start outlining some of our elements, starting with a little fire right here in the middle. I'll have a little bit of black on it, and I'm going to add some red later. And here's our Buffy stencil with the October words that will also sort of meld into the forest and into the ground. And I'm outlining our small coven here in the woods and just filling them in completely with black. Doing silhouettes is very forgiving. For example, one of these ladies I had accidentally given kind of a hunchback, and I just had to rearrange the black a little bit to make her look a little bit more normal instead of having that little bit of a hunchback look. And like I said, we are going to use hints of red here and there for a pop of color. Here I'm putting it on our fire. To start with the forest, we are going to begin with the very lightest gray we have. I normally do an N95, but I didn't think it was quite dark enough, so this is one step up from that. We are going to draw the outline of some pine trees and some firs. The pine trees just have these little wiggly branches. Draw a straight line, start building your branches out from there. If you need a photo reference, just Google one of a pine tree silhouette. You don't want to overthink it. You don't want to put too much detail into it. You really just kind of want to let it flow and see what comes of it. And as we build forward, we're going to go a little bit darker and a little bit darker. So you see some of these are pine trees, and then some of them are just a triangle that is irregular that looks like a basic fir shape. Once we have a few of those in place, we're going to level up to the next darkest shade. For this one, I chose one that has a little bit of a blue tinge to it, just to give our forest a little bit more interest. And we are going to lather, rinse, repeat here. And this is where you can start overlapping one color over the other. So this second darkest gray can overlap over that light gray. And what's going to happen is we're going to end up having what looks like the light gray trees are way in the back of the forest, and the darker ones are closer to the front of the forest. And of course, I am honoring that circle that I have drawn around my coven so that they are enclosed in that little lighted area of the forest. Here you can see I have leveled up to yet another dark gray, not quite to the black yet, and we are repeating all of the same elements again. And again, because this one is darker than the other two colors, we can color in front of them. Don't worry about the extra spaces. We are going to come back in with all of these colors in a little bit, even after we do some of the black. So we will level up here to the black. Here we go, to start getting in that really dark color in the front. And then we will take that black and take all of our other shades here in a little bit and fill in some of the gaps. I admit that just before this point, I had even thought to myself, like, theoretically, this should work, and yet I don't know if it's necessarily coming together the way that I wanted it to. But once I started adding in this black layer, I knew that it was going to work and it was going to look exactly how I wanted it to, if not even a little bit better. And if I can do this, y'all, anybody can, because I didn't have but 2 or 3 of these trees sketched in where I wanted them. The rest of them, we are just going on intuition and thinking, I think I need to darken it here. I think I need to put a tree there. There's a little bit of a gap in this space. Here I have moved back to that dark gray. I had finished up with some black and I felt like we needed to put in some more of that dark gray. And I kind of come up a little bit. I do the dark gray. I add in a little bit more of the blue gray, which I'm doing in here just to deepen our forest. And then I'll come back in as well with the light gray. Now, when I come back in with that lightest color gray, not only am I going to add another forest layer here at the back, I'm also just going to kind of go over any of the spots amongst the black and the dark gray that have a white spot, just to give it a little bit of a background. Now, I wasn't going to put in anything else, and then I saw this corner up here and I thought, well, we need a moon. And so I'm using the same colors and some of the same techniques to just give us a marker moon. Again, I didn't want to paint anything and I didn't want to draw anything, but we do have to add a little bit of color down here to October so that we can see it hiding amongst the trees. And now it's time for lyrics, and this entire playlist was inspired by the song In the Shadows by Amy Stroup. And the chorus reads, there's something in the shadows, cut you like an arrow. Shifting through the dark, your strength is in your weakness, this fire in your blood. Hanging from that hope, but everybody knows there's something in the shadows. And there is my cover page for October 2023. Again, the theme is Conclave of Lost Shadows. I wanted to do a coven in a shadowy wood to illustrate that, doing it only with markers, and I really love the way that it turned out. Moving on to the next spread, and this is going to be my calendar spread as well as my project list area. I'm going to start off by putting an OCT for October up here in the left corner, and then we're just going to do a linear calendar in the standard bullet journal style and number it from 1 to 31. I'm also going to put the days of the week next to that in black. Now, what I am going to use this for is basically memory keeping, and I've done that in September. We're going to look back at September here in a little bit, where I just put in the highlight for the day or 1 or 2 highlights for that day. And then over on my project list, I have 1 for Dots and Beyond, 1 for home, and 1 for sides or other. And I really wanted to get that functional structure in before I started heavily decorating. To have that pop of red, I'm doing the red for October, and then we are going to highlight where our weekends fall in the month, and then I'll start doing our decorating. And we're going to start with the same, creating our land base here on the bottom. For this particular illustration, I am going to do a witch flying away on her broom from the same shadowy forest. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but none of my coven had witch hats on in the cover page. This one's also not going to have a witch hat on. That was a conscious decision to make us have a little bit more of modern witchery taking place. But this one does have a broom. We're also going to replicate our moon behind her. And to do the moon, I started with that bluish gray color, just kind of edged around it, created some craters, came back in with the darker gray, created some more craters, came in with the lighter gray, colored all of it, created some more lighter colored craters, and that's how we did the moon with the marker. And as for our forest, we're going to do things a little bit differently. So this time I started with the gray, the really, really light gray to get my background, and then I'm putting in a base of the black on the front, and then I'm going to put in a base of the gray, and then I'm going to put in a base of the bluish gray, and then we'll come back in with some of our fir trees and pine trees to round it all out and make it look a little more full. And you just have to remember, like I learned in this process, the more irregularity you have, the more it's going to look like a natural forest. Because as much as we look at fir trees or perfect holiday Christmas trees and think that they are a perfect triangle, they're really not. And many of them have been trimmed. So in nature, things are irregular. You don't have perfect triangles. Things lean one way or the other. And so having a lot of that irregularity is what is going to make your forest look a little bit more natural, a little bit more like it's a blurry photograph, even though you are creating this with markers. Before starting this process, I did take a scrap piece of paper and my 4 markers. Actually, I started with 3, and that's how I decided I needed a 4th color. And thought, can I make this work will this actually look like a forest? And it absolutely does. And that will wrap up my memory keeping calendar page as well as my project list for October 2023. And we're going to move on to the last spread that I'm going to do for this particular setup. In this one, I'm going to have a playlist where I'm going to highlight the beginnings of my 2023 October playlist. And then I'm also going to have a review page on the right. For this page, we're going to start off with the same black base, but I'm only going to have a hint of a forest on the left side. And then we are going to have our coven coming out of the forest holding hands with one another. Now, I did find a silhouetted image of some women walking into a sunset, and that's where I took the inspiration for this. I did change them up a little bit to give them a little more diversity. Like even in the silhouette, I managed to give one of them a little bit more curly hair. I managed to make a couple of them a little more curvy than the original silhouetted individuals were, and just change them up a little bit to fit my own dynamic. And like I said before, when you're doing a silhouette, it's very forgiving. You can definitely fix things just with the marker if you put something in the wrong place. You can also fix things with a white gel pen if you need to. It's a very precise version of whiteout, just getting that white gel pen in there. If you gave someone a little bit too much hip or a little too weird of a nose, you can just come in and fix it with that white gel pen. I am adding in a little bit more texture here on the edge of our forest. It's very, very light, just a little bit of one color, a little bit of another on top of that black edge that we had already put in. And as you've seen throughout this setup, I have this scrap piece of dot grid paper. It's from cutting off a Dutch door one time, and I just use that anytime I'm working right on the edge. Here on the right, we are going to put in a review page. I don't quite know what I want my review categories to be yet, so I'm going to go ahead and leave those 3 gray areas untitled at this time. Then we're creating another moon. We got a gap over here. We're going to put in another one of our marker created moons before moving on to the playlist on the left side. My playlist for 2023 is titled Witch, with the periods in it, inspired by the Devon Cole song, so W.I.T.C.H. And it is a fun one. It's not originally what I was going to go with. I had a completely different vibe going, which might get moved to my 2024 playlist since I already had some songs populated on it. But this time I decided I was already in the witchy mood since we did our Conclave of Lost Shadows playlist. Felt very witchy. That was 2018. It's now 23. Felt like it had been long enough that I could circle back around and create another witch-inspired playlist. So some of the songs that are on that are Supernatural by Barnes Courtney, Dark Side by Bishop Briggs, Witch by Florence and the Machine, Dark Lady by Cher, Queen by Lauren Gray, The Magic by Lola Blanc, and Witch by Devon Cole. We have, a whole bunch more, 23 other fun songs on that playlist. It will be linked down below on both YouTube and Spotify. And that is it for my 2023 setup. After these pages, I will just do some daily logging. But let's go ahead and flip to the front so we can stick in our playlist image here. To do that, I am going to use a Tombow tape runner because I just printed this on regular paper, and stick that right into that spot. And then we're going to go ahead and just peek at what I did in September. So in September, this is the one I forgot to film, y'all. This is the one where I'd used printables to fix what I didn't like. Here we have my September where I've been putting in memory keeping. It's really not that neat. On the health, I've only been tracking my sleep because my Apple Watch needs an update and it's so old it's going to take it like 5 hours to do it. So I have no idea what my step numbers are. And then I just had this daily logging, and I've left myself some blank pages in between where I was and setting up this particular spread. And let's go ahead and flip through this, and then we're going to pick our playlist for November. So again, here is the Conclave of Shadows cover page, as well as my linear memory keeping calendar and project list, and then the playlist and review page. And again, not sure what review categories I want to have in there. And again, I'll have this playlist linked down below so that y'all can click on it and link to it if you want to check that out. And then I didn't create a header or anything. We're just going to daily log behind these pages. I hope you enjoyed this Conclave of Lost Shadows setup since y'all voted for it, but now it's time for us to look at November. And for November, I didn't necessarily pick anything that was specifically vibey or seasonal. I just went with 3 different playlists that I like and you guys can choose from. The first is Empress and the Royals, which is inspired by 30 Seconds to Mars, Kings and Queens, and it's songs that have royalty in the title. Think royalty from a deck of cards. So the ace would be the Empress, and then the King, Queen, and Jack. The second is "'Tis Your Cue." These are my favorite songs from Broadway and musicals and theater. If you want to see me live out my favorite Broadway fantasies in bullet journal form, this is the one to vote for. And a third is Inceptions, based on one of my favorite movies, Inception. These are songs about dreams, illusion, and fantasy. And what direction that setup would take, I have no idea. To vote on one of those 3 playlists, you can head over to my community tab now and vote there. It's been a fun year of playlist setups, and it's wild to think that we only have 2 months left. If you guys like this video, please, you know what to do. Go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you in the next one.